create Carl's open eye wound, I'm going to be using a build-up technique in which I use 3rd degree to build up the prosthetic onto my life cast. If you don't have a life cast, you can sculpt it onto a mannequin head, or you can just go ahead and sculpt it onto your face. Now for the first layer of the buildup, I'm going to do a mixture of red 3rd degree. And how I achieve this is to mix 3rd degree with a little bit of red grease paint. So what I've done is smear a layer onto the eye socket, and then I've used my brush dipped in alcohol to blend down the edges. You want to keep the edges very thin so you can blend them down into your actual skin when you apply the prosthetic. Next, I create a little depth by jabbing my spatula into the red goo. Then I also used a black stipple sponge to create even more texture. First layer should look a little something like this. The second layer is meant to encircle the edges of the eye socket, so I just mixed up a flesh-toned batch of 3rd degree and applied it to the perimeter of the open socket. And like with the previous layer, I did focus on blending those edges down with a brush dipped in alcohol. This was a gunshot wound, so to create that jagged effect, I just moved the silicone around with my brush. For this final layer, I focused most of the volume of the 3rd degree around the perimeter of the wound and then tapered it out. Adding a little bit more 3rd degree to the perimeter is going to give the effect of more depth to the eye socket. Before that silicone sets, you want to go ahead and blend down those edges again with the brush, and then add some pore texture with a stipple sponge. That should be what your final prosthetic looks like. Now I'm going to do a bit of pre-painting. I prefer to do this when I can actually see with both eyes instead of just one. So I'm just using alcohol paint to fill in some of those textured lumps and bumps inside the eye socket. Something I decided to try out was to seal off those colors, so I just painted a layer of 3rd degree on top of the eye socket. And to remove, I took a sculpting tool actually and just lightly poked it underneath and lightly pulled upwards, and it popped right off the life cast. To start this application, I removed any oils from my skin using a bit of alcohol, and then I glued down my eyebrows using a glue stick. Once that was dry, I placed the prosthetic onto my eye and powdered around the edges. This layer of powder is going to give you a good idea where the prosthetic is going to sit. That way you know where to place your pros-aide. Which leads me to pros-aide, which is the adhesive that I'm going to be using to apply this prosthetic. And I'm just going to lay down a layer of the pros-aide around the eye and let it dry. You'll know it's dry when it turns clear, so then you're going to go ahead and place the prosthetic into place. And you just want to tap around the edges of the prosthetic to make sure it adheres to the skin. To seal off the edges of the prosthetic, I went ahead and applied a thin layer of pros-aide. And then to help blend the prosthetic even further down into my skin, I applied another layer of 3rd degree. I kept this layer really thin, and I used my brush and sponge techniques to blend it into my skin. To match that wound to my own skin, I used the RCMA concealer palette and just dabbed that onto the wound. From the reference photos that I saw of this episode, there was a lot of blood on Carl, or should I say Carl's silicone dummy. So I'm going to be adding a lot of blood, and for the blood I'm going to be using drying bloods in both fresh and dark. And really just going ham with it. Like, I like to let it drip down from the wound. I like to smear it with my fingers. I like to use a sponge. I like to use a wet wipe and just kind of smudge it around, smear it around, just have a good time with the blood. I finished off this makeup by adding an eyebrow. I kept looking in the mirror and thinking, what's wrong? Something looks off. Then I realized I needed the eyebrow, so I just penciled one in. What do you call a one-eyed dinosaur? A do-you-think-he-saurus? Well, what do you call a one-eyed Carl? Carl! What did the right eye say to the left eye? Between you and me, something smells.
Bonk bonk.
That's gonna wrap up this makeup tutorial on Carl's missing eye. I really hope you enjoyed it. If you did, please make sure to hit that thumbs up button and join me on Facebook, Twitter, and Instagram. And let me know what you thought of the new episode in the comments below. I thought it was a real eye-opener, and I was in shock the whole time. Alright, that's enough for the eye puns. Thanks guys so much for watching. Take care and I'll see you soon. Bye.
Dad?